All right, I'm going to try to wake things up just a little bit. And apologies because I'm a little jet lagged. I've been in 4 cities in 3 countries in the past 4 days, so I'm a little out of it. Woo! Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys to do something for me. Any of you who have customers who are operating in other countries or speaking multiple languages, can you please stand up? Okay, so no, I didn't tell you to sit down yet. I got another question. Come on. If you have customers who speak other languages, please stand up. Okay, now, if you are not offering content in other languages for those customers today, can you please remain standing and everyone else sit down? So you guys do realize there's a gap there, right? Like your customers are all multilingual, perhaps this is an area that you need to be thinking about, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. Before I get too far into it, I do want to talk about partnership. Translations.com and Jahia, we've been a partner now for over a year. We worked with Accelerating Digital and Jahia to build an integration. That integration is now live and available. We had a press release recently that we launched about that. And when we think about partnership, though, it's not just us and a partner, right? It's not just us and Jahia or the system integrator or the client. It's really all of us working together to try to improve how you're communicating globally. So that said, I'm going to show you just a brief video. Fidelis, if you could pull up that video, that would be great. This is a customer case study, and I want to just show that to you first, and then we'll explain it in a minute.
Marriott is an international hotel company with 17 brands in 73 countries. We have 3,700 properties that range from select to full service, including resorts and 5-star hotels. My name is Mariana Cavalcanti, and I'm the Vice President for E-commerce User Experience for Marriott International. I oversee all the global websites, and I'm the primary person responsible for the online user experience. Since a large number of our guests interact with online websites prior to their stay, it's very important that the Marriott websites deliver content in a reliable and user-friendly way.
Marriott is one of the most successful global hotel brands in the world. When you think of Marriott, you think of a high-quality, diverse guest experience. In fact, it's hard to think of a place or a price point where you won't find a Marriott property that fits the bill. They've done a great job at establishing themselves as a premium and diverse hospitality brand.
Our engagement and experience with our guests starts way before the check-in. It really starts when someone starts to research their reservation online.
When we first engaged Marriott on the topic of global experience management, the one thing that became immediately clear is that the passion they put into the on-site guest experience extends to the online experience as well.
Marriott has opened several properties in the last 5 years in non-English speaking countries. In order to reach these customers and support these new properties, we have to localize the content. But it's not really only about localizing the content, it's really about localizing well and making sure that we provide the proper user experience for these new customers. We are happy to have Translations.com language services and Global Link technology help us with the translation of our content in many languages and also supporting properties from select services to full-service resort hotels. Translations.com Global Link Suites manages all our content for our global websites. It keeps our content up to date and on brand. Managing all this content was very time-consuming, but now with Global Link Suites, we spend less time with project management and more time is what really matters, which is maximizing the user experience for our sites.
Global Link simplifies the workflows in the creation and the deployment of multilingual content. So put simply, Global Link allows Marriott to easily manage their global web presence in multiple languages. We were also able to do this while maintaining Marriott's strong brand voice across all languages, which can often be compromised when rolling out global websites. The end result is consistent, on-brand terminology in all languages, with decreased internal resource burdens, reduced translation costs, and the fastest possible time to market. The great thing about working with Marriott is they have an exceptional and award-winning website. So the multilingual presence happened from a great starting point.
We are very happy to be named #1 hotel website by USA Today. Our top priority continues to be delivering top content, quality content, and reliable bookings to our guests all over the world. We have 3,700 hotel websites, and no country, market, or language is more important than the other. We want to create special and unique moments in every interaction we create between our guests and Marriott, whether that be online or in person. Marriott has a great pipeline of new hotels coming in the next few years. Whether in South America and Asia, there are plans to create new hotels on the select service or the full service markets. Whether we are talking about properties in Maryland, Mexico, or Malaysia, when it comes to the non-English speaker guest, Translations.com plays a huge role in making and helping us have a great and successful online experience.
Thanks, Fidelis. So I wanted to show that to you, not to show off. Well, actually, I kind of wanted to show off a little bit, but I wanted you guys to see the problems that we're solving. Ultimately, we're helping companies go global with their brand. Right? If you're talking about multilingual, it's not, I'm going to put a Google widget out there and I'm multilingual, right? It's not going to be, I'm going to use the multilingual machine translation from X company, bam, I'm global. We're talking about digital experiences here. And those have multiple components. Those have multiple audience, consumers. So what we're solving is actually a much more complex problem than simply putting a widget on a website and hoping that your customers don't notice that it's being put forth through a machine. So real quickly on our company before I get too far down the rabbit hole, we've been around now for several years. You can see some of our stats. Global business, offices worldwide, and ultimately there is no market that we're not supporting today. About 90 offices, close to 4,000 employees at this point, $500 million company. And what is it that we're offering? In a nutshell, it boils down to, on one side of the house, language services. So what that means, right, is everything from putting a doctor in an office with an interpreter, with a patient so that they can all communicate together. Everything from something as analog as that, all the way up to and including fully digital experiences like what you saw with Marriott and what they were describing. We're talking call centers internationally. We're talking international optimization. We're talking localization, transcreation. All of that is on the language services side, and you can see some of those tiles here on this screen. The other side of our house is why I'm really here. This is a translation management system, GlobalLink. GlobalLink is a platform that's used today by over 3,000 companies worldwide to make this problem of translation more easy. And I'm going to explain to you why it's not easy as I go through the presentation. If you're a company, you recognize that going global is critical to your growth. You have to get out of your fishbowl and go into the bigger one. But the reason why is you're not really sure. Well, what are some of the stats? When you look at it, this is something that a lot of people don't realize. English is actually only consumed by 13% of the world today. All right, so 87% of the world today has the interest and the preference to communicate in other languages. If you're English only, that might work if your business is only selling in the States, a very specific service or product. But if you have the intention to grow globally, if you have the intention to enter other markets, if you're supporting other markets, you must have that multilingual content. Taking the stat a step further, here's the breakdown of all of the percentages of people online, where they're coming from, which regions of the world. Now, Asia Pac is, well, nearly 50%. And is that a target market for you? Not necessarily, right? You have to think about your products, think about your services, think about whether or not they might be relevant for that market. And you have to think about what that market is buying. Think about if you have competitors in that market, that might make it even more difficult for you to enter that market, or maybe even not worth it. But the point is that here's how it breaks down. And in the end, language is important. In fact, it's so important that people care about having content in their language more than they care about the cost of those products. Right? So if you offer content, let's say, in Spanish to a Spanish-speaking market, they're looking more for making sure that it's in their language more than they are at what the cost is. It's an interesting stat. That could mean, if the reverse might be true, and it would have to be researched, that you could potentially charge more in a certain market by simply having it available, the content, in their language. Interesting opportunity. That's why so many retailers today are offering several multilingual websites, because they see that the opportunity is there for maybe a little price variance, perhaps even more profitability, and at scale, something that pays for itself very quickly. So let's say you jump into that bigger fishbowl. What does that mean, right? What do you have to do then next once you're in there? Well, you have to go through a transformation ultimately, especially if you're dealing with digital content. You have to be prepared for all of the places where your buyers are going to be. In certain markets, it may make sense to have a mobile-first strategy. In other markets, you may need to have mobile and your web covered, and with a certain strategy around how that content is delivered to your users. The fact is, you're going to have to transform. You're going to need a content management system like Jahia and translation management, such as like what we're going to show you from GlobalLink, to help you make all of that much more scalable. But the problem is something that a lot of you are aware of. You know, it comes right down to it. I put this up there as a way to break up the talk a little bit, so I can make sure you guys are paying attention. Please do not empty your dog here. Please wait outside the noodle. The problem is that people think, when they hear of translation, they think of this, right? They think the translation problem, the challenge is getting that language right. And I'm here to tell you that, unfortunately, that is part of it, but it's a much bigger challenge than that. And that challenge comes from the fact that you have people consuming information on multiple devices, and that content is actually coming from multiple repositories, right? And so this is where it gets really tricky, is you have that content coming from all over the place, and the font there looks terrible, but the point is that that content, if you have to get it translated with this process, let's see, that's 18 steps, and 18 steps across 6 repositories. Let's say you make that into 4 languages. This ends up being an incredibly cumbersome process. The process alone ends up being even a bigger problem, a more costly problem than the actual translation itself. Translation is actually pretty affordable. Human translation, professional human translation. So if you look at it, the real cost in localization and in going global has a lot more to do with these factors: multiple repositories, multiple languages, multiple steps. And beyond all of that, you have thousands of pages of content to add to the problem. So these are the things that this GlobalLink system are solving for. And we'll talk about that in a moment. This process, by the way, with Jahia, once it's optimized, looks a lot more like this, right? We went from 18 steps down to 8. And how we're able to do that is we take all of the red boxes and we cut them out of the process through having a direct integration. Beyond all of that, the value is not just in cutting steps out and manual effort out across multiple repositories, but also you get gains from something that's referred to as translation memory. So as you translate a sentence, that can get stored into a database. So let's say that the translation is, this projector is white, and you're a projector company, and you sell a lot of projectors, and you have that same exact sentence in 10,000 products on your website. We store that translation done by a human and approved by your team into the database. And our system will, when the next time a product is sent through, it'll parse all of that copy, against our database. It'll look for the strings and the context of those strings. And if the context is the same through the algorithm that's in the system, and the sentence is the same, it'll pull that string directly into the file, which ultimately pulls it directly back into your website. So what this leads to is faster translation. And for companies that have a high volume of products like Marriott, who she said earlier, you heard her, Mariana, that there's 3,700 properties, when 60% of their copy is repeated across that volume of properties and 10 languages, you actually get millions of dollars of savings in how the content itself is actually processed. Not just the automation from taking the steps out of the process, and not just from us integrating into all of the backend repositories that they have for content, but also through the reuse of those strings. And for them, that also gives them better branding, better consistency. That's kind of the crappy thing that happens when you're translating copy, is if you have multiple stakeholders translating in multiple different areas and you're using different vendors, they could actually translate things differently. And so if you have a product and then you have a help file, and your help file is describing a menu in a different way than how it actually is translated on the screen, you're going to have a user with a problem. A user who, when they have that problem, is going to call your call center. When they call your call center, that's going to create a cost for you. So that cost actually is significant when added up over millions of customers each year. And that's the kind of thing that we're cutting out entirely by using consistent translations throughout all of your web content. And this is just real quickly a Forrester report that I have. I can email this to anyone who's interested. My email address is just, I'll give you a card. Come to me. My last name's Panagopoulos. I don't want you to have to write it all down, but I'll give you a card if you want to see it. The report just talks about how you can actually get savings across productivity, which was cutting out all those workflow steps, across translation cost savings, that's the translation memory piece, and then because it's coming out of the translation memory, you have a much faster time to market as well. And essentially all of that can add up to millions of dollars of savings in this robotic looking like font that I have here on the screen. So that's essentially it, guys. That's all I wanted to call out for you today, that we have this technology. It's solving a problem. We've integrated it with Jahia so that you, as a customer or a prospect, have a way to easily get your content translated and ultimately save you time and money and go to market much faster. That's it.